This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to Facing the Mirror with Wesley and Gordon.
Please turn on the lights. Let me see you crying. You're not here alone. I'm in here with you trying. I want to see the truth. Find the broken pieces.
So I'm so glad to be back in the studio. The other was good, but it's not as good as being here with you. And it's a whole lot more fun to be here. And I just
With me?
Yes, and I also sound better. Right? I heard all that tweaking and all that. It sounded good. No, I loved it. It was fine. I'm just giving him a hard time. See?
That was out of my control.
I was. Yes, it was indeed.
I was exactly where I'm supposed to be on the day I was supposed to be.
Well, and I was in such a nice park, and it was really pretty, and it was really nice. I really enjoyed being there, and it was super cool that we could continue to do this. Technology.
You got to keep the ball rolling.
Got to keep the ball rolling. You know, I heard something this morning that not to get, I don't know that we really have a direction yet, but this morning somebody said, I was watching a news program, which I generally don't do, and this guy said the remedy to depression was expression. Think on that. So now this guy was like, mind you, this guy was a singer, songwriter, and a guy on the TV show had run into this guy in Chattanooga somewhere, and he was playing a guitar on the street corner, and he wanted to find out this guy's story. And so he's doing a series on just stories, people's personal stories. And he got to talking to this guy, and this guy, he had an amazing voice. Anyway, he got to talking to him, and this guy gave him this piece of information, which I thought was so insightful. Because if you think about all the ways in which we express ourselves, and a lot of times people who are depressed don't have a vehicle through which they can express themselves.
I can see that. I mean, when you go into a meeting or you're routinely going to like Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever, and all of the exterior expressions that I use seem to go away, and people want you to express yourself through your story,
internally,
through your story, and that's pretty cool when those connections like that. But yeah, I can see in that setting that the response. Well, it's like me encountering some homeless people on my property. Mm-hmm. There's one or two ways you can go about it. One, you can just roll up on them and do just mm-hmm. come out of the gate mm-hmm. with them, or you can talk to them a little bit,
humanize them,
and but I have a unique ability to put myself in their situations, mm-hmm. And you get to know them, and they will move when you ask them mm-hmm. politely. It's all the resistance. So
we all will move when you ask us politely. Look at that. There's a great segue. Welcome to Facing the Mirror, you guys. I'm really glad to be back.
Welcome back.
I'm glad to be sitting here in this nice, cozy studio, and this not being quite so disrupted, and it works out great. And anyway,
you know, I could tell in your voice though, you loved where you were, but I could also tell you wanted to be here too.
Explain.
I just think, because I think me and you jive better face to face.
Well, when we're looking at each other, that's part of the shtick.
But I could still tell, because Wesley was a little more amped up than you normally are. I
didn't notice that until I listened, and I was
real excited to be able to still be a part of the show and be and enjoy where you were. But it was interesting because when I was listening to it, I was like, dude, he's flying 90 to nothing.
I didn't really feel that way until I heard it.
What did you think?
Well, I thought it was great.
Yeah,
I thought
I
thought it spurred a lot of interesting conversation. But
take your own personal inventory.
Right. And I was listening to it, and I was talking faster than normal. And I was also outside in this.
Just excited.
It was just a real different environment, but it was really cool to be able, and I thought it was really cool to be able to do it, to be able to do it anyway from where we were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was an element of that. And of course, I was a little bit more aware of listening to you and responding to you because I'm not looking you in the eyes like I am now. Right. Like, and
so
we respond to each other's visceral, like all the nuances, right? Like I can look at you and we're looking and talking, but there's so much more going on other than just the words.
Well,
right?
I found it interesting that as we're sitting here, if I don't visually see you, like when I heard myself,
mm-hmm.
I didn't know when to interject.
Right.
And I think me and you give each other such good clues exteriorly to one another that it works so that was interesting.
So it's interesting. That's an interesting point that you make. And therein lies some of the technical issues we have with telehealth.
Oh.
Because, well, not so much with visual telehealth as opposed to just like a phone call or something, because you don't have 50% of your engagement opportunity because so much of the body language and eye contact and
or a lag or something.
Yeah, the comfort level in the room, right? There's so much that's set up.
Or when your patient may be frozen on screen for a second, but the voice is still coming through. Right. That could be, I could see where that would throw you off your game a little bit. And not that you were, but what I also found interesting, it was a complete role reversal. Mm-hmm. I had the topic, I came to you, and I went, and when I listened to it, most of the information, it was given to you without you
rather than me providing
so
it.
You were, yeah.
It's interesting. So there's a different dynamic.
Well, you also drug some other examples that I hadn't heard in a long time, or maybe not, because you were sharing your story.
Oh, you mean my personal examples?
Yeah, yeah, and how much that interaction with those people meant to you, and I don't know if we've had that. Well, I think we have, but not like that.
You know, that's interesting that I say interesting so much. I keep trying to catch myself saying interesting, but everything is interesting, I guess, to me. So isn't that interesting? And so, so my son was actually talking to me about listening to the podcast. And so he and his friend are going through it episode by episode and apparently talking about it. And he had said, he made mention to me that there were several examples that I had used that he had not heard, and that essentially he said brought tears to his eyes, right? And a lot of it related to my dad and our conversations about our dads, because he was super close to my dad, and just in our conversations, which I think promotes some conversation that we can have in the future, more specifically related to our dads, and I think that can be, a really interesting talking point.
And I told you about an experience of what this podcast has done for me about clearing away old wounds. Mm-hmm. And I had that interaction with my oldest son over the gun. Mm-hmm. And I explained to him, and I write, when I really want to get to the root and talk from the heart, I'll write you a letter. Mm-hmm. And so I thought the best way for me to express this moment, this thing that I haven't thought about in years or forgotten about when I cloud myself up with all the negative and the bad. Mm-hmm. And then we had this moment of, well, I'm not going to say it because anyway, clarity. And so I had that same exchange with God, we're so much alike in our dynamic, but that something we're doing now that we can talk about, or you can talk about with me, when before you wouldn't be able to share a session with your family, and I know you wouldn't. But for him to see a piece of that with you, I can't wait till 6 months down the road and you come on and go, dude, you wouldn't believe we're in a car together and we got to have this father-son moment.
He called me over lunch last week.
I'm so happy for you. No, I really am. That's good.
That's good shit.
That's good shit. But man, that's what keeps me going through all the uncomfortable things I do. That moment with my son and this one with yours is going to make all that be worth it.
So he called me and he didn't really have anything to talk about. Like it was lunch and he was just calling to say, hey, what's up? And apparently he had some kind of, right before I got him on the phone, he had some kind of negative interaction with someone in a drive-through line. Like, I don't think it was a exchange. It wasn't verbal. It was just this woman kind of, I think, jumped in line in front of him or something. I don't know. But by the time I got him on the phone, he was sort of teed up. So anyway, we got to talking about that and we kind of worked through that. But then he got to telling me about listening to the podcast. And he segued from that into the podcast. And what was really fascinating was, because, I mean, he is my kid, he went into sort of deconstructing us, you and me, and our comparisons and contrasts in who we are. And it was really interesting for him. I kept, because he knows I like to deconstruct things. And he was like, he was
pretty
spot on. Yeah. And he was talking about our similarities and yet our differences. And in the way we approach things, because you're sort of shoot from the hip and I'm much more reserved and clinical, and how the contrast of that is really helpful. And I was like, oh, wow, he gets it. That he was thinking, he's 22. He's living on his own. He's working, he's doing his thing. But point being is even at his age, he was able to sort of get the point of this.
Yeah.
And it provided him some clarity. How's that for a segue into our topic today, which is clarity? I know better than not to trust God, but sometimes I forget that.
Ooh. Well, if you go back from my experience and page 55 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
I'm just so impressed you know what's on the specific page. I love that.
It's second paragraph too.
Wow.
That's how many times I've read.
I don't think I know anything that well.
But it says, and I'm paraphrasing, it says, deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental concept of God. Sometimes it may be obscured by pomp, whatever. So the God within has always been there.
Our spiritual core.
And the miracle of this whole thing is that we were born. We are the miracle. In simplistic terms, that's what AA says.
And in and of itself, that's really all we need to know. And we get so distracted from that, though.
Exactly. So sometimes when I'm acting the way I do or encountering situations in not a godlike manner, now that's not me putting myself on a pedestal with God. That just means, what would God have me do? St. Francis prayer. How am I going to show up? And if I'm disconnected from that, I can see that statement makes absolute sense to me.
When we're in the midst of an experience, it's easy to forget that there's a plan. Sometimes all we can see is today.
And what does AA say? All you have is today. Don't get caught up in all. You just got 24 hours.
How often do you hear me talking about stay in the present?
Stay in the moment. This moment is this moment. What I do with it after that moment affects the rest of my moments.
So funny that you say that, because I was not having good moments this morning for whatever reason. And you have said things to me recently about, oh, you're getting vulnerable. I was not having good moments this morning. And you know what? I kept thinking all morning, if I can just get to that moment where we get in front of that microphone, I will get outside of my headspace and I will get into that moment, because in this moment, I'm out of my own headspace. I'm talking to you. We're talking to everyone who's listening to us, and it gets me out of my space, right? Gets me out of my own internal dialogue, right?
Well,
to where I'm back in my wheelhouse, which is helping somebody else and not being in my own headspace.
Well, plus I don't know how. I've often asked you. So when you go home and you've had this day, and God only knows how many people you can see a day, but I know you probably put as many as you can.
7 or 8 or 9.
Okay.
Depends.
How do you decompress? And you just go, oh, yeah, but do you start, when do you have time to psychoanalyze yourself? When
I'm facing the mirror.
Well, right. And do you?
No, sometimes I do. But
so when's the last time you and Kathleen met?
Well, it's been a long time ago.
See?
But
Wesley,
so,
you forget about yourself.
What's interesting, yes, you're saying that because my life has been super complicated.
And I do the same thing.
Yeah, super complicated. More complicated in the last several years.
So 8 weeks, I think you've had a chance to uncover, discover, and discard.
Discarding. So I spent a lot of the weekend discarding a bunch of my parents' stuff.
Well, you're
out of
good
their
at
house. Hold on. This is a point, right? So I think that's part of what's been going on in my headspace. Was we had a roll-off dumpster at my parents' house, and we were discarding a bunch of things, right? And so that closure is not always positive. It's not always happy. And so my mom's been gone since 21. My dad's been gone since 13. But my mom was kind of a hoarder, and there was a whole lot of extra stuff there that didn't really need to be there. And anyway, there's been a process because I hold on to things too. And so there's been this sort of gradually discarding process. And so I think part of what was going on in my headspace this morning was just a continuation of trying to get that finished up.
It's like a hangover.
And it's a metaphor, right? Because I've got people tonight until 7:00, and my wife's got to go down and wrap that up. And I have said to her so many times, just do it, because I can't watch. I can't watch that stuff. Even though I know it needs to be discarded, even though there are pieces and parts of it I don't need to keep, look at the metaphor. And yet I don't want to watch it leave, right? And so I was there all weekend and trying to get out of it, get out of my headspace and not be emotionally connected to it, which was very hard to do when you're in the space with the stuff, right? There's all these visual cues. I was in their garage. I was in their house, all these things. I mean, I would pick up this whatever it was and go, oh, I, made that in Boy Scouts, or I did that, and whatever it was. And there would be things that Nancy would pick up and look and show me and go, do you want to keep this? And my natural inclination was yes. And even when I knew some of it needed to be discarded.
All of it. I mean,
most of it needed to be discarded.
But when we left my mom's house as it sat for 1 year, for me and my sister to be able to go do that. And my natural thing is everything in our house brought memories up. Mm-hmm. And what do you throw away? What do you keep? And my sponsors and people I've talked to said, you already have the memory. That's just a material thing.
Well, the interesting piece of that, though, is when you're dealing with the minutia of all the little specific pieces, there are so many things that pieces represent that if you didn't pick up that piece and have it in your hand, you wouldn't remember.
You're getting clarity.
Right?
And it's painful.
If we were to watch only 2 minutes of the middle of a television program, it would make little sense. It would be a disconnected event. This is the reading. And so I walked into, so I will have to say that this has been a gradual process, and I did lease that house about 2 years ago, and we had gotten most everything moved into the garage and the garden room, and those 2 rooms were the only rooms left that were not usable by the tenants, and they needed them. They wanted to use them, and I've been putting them off and putting them off and putting them off. Fortunately, the tenant is someone who's close to me and understands the process and has been thankfully very forgiving of my dealing with it.
Right.
And so anyway, we finally decided it was time. We set this up. And as goofy as it sounds, so there have been several storms and a lot of, the windows got broken in one of those rooms. And so some of that stuff got wet. And it was almost a blessing to me that it got wet and I could choose to discard it for that reason, rather than when it was still in its most intact form, I couldn't let it go. I had to have a reason to let it go. And I had to, like, I hate to say it like this, but I mean, the reality of it is I had to let it get ruined
to be able
let
to
it go.
Well,
and in and of itself, that's a blessing because it kept me from hanging on. It kept me from, because I mean, we've had multiple conversations about this, that I knew that when I went in that it would be very difficult and I would probably argue with my wife because she's a discarder and I'm not. And that's fine. I needed for her to do that. And oftentimes I would say, just don't even show me.
So if
just get rid of it. If you think it needs to be gotten rid of, don't show me. If I don't know, I won't, but if I see it, I'll identify with it. I'll have some sort of emotional reaction to it and I'll want to keep it. How often has that happened with just our general experiences in life?
If you sought me and I was sponsoring you right now, you know what I'd tell you?
What?
You need to go do that with your wife.
I did.
Even today. Don't send her to do it and just get rid of it. And I think, and I don't mean it like that, but that's that where 2 people are in it. Somebody better stay in a solution, because just put yourself in
that. I knew I would not be able to do. I stay in the solution all the time.
Right.
And in that situation, I could not disconnect from it well enough to be in the solution. And when my wife was in the solution, I was upset with her.
Resentful.
Because I was like, you're
going to throw it all.
You just get away. Yeah. Why are you doing that? You just don't have any connection to it. And even though my headspace knows, I don't often get into that space. I don't often let myself get into that very conflicted space between head and heart, because I'm either in one or the other. Most of the time I'm in my head.
This one you've been dealing with since your mom passed away when I was still coming to you.
This one I've been dealing with since my dad died. And hold on. So I don't know if I've said this on the show, but my best friend from college, who's also a psychologist, after my dad died, we were on a conversation, a call, and I was telling him that I was about to go see someone myself, right? And the thing that came out of his mouth over the phone, he said, you need to make sure that you tell that guy to hold you accountable for your feelings, because you think your feelings better than anyone that I know.
Okay. Go back to me and you. From day one, you've allowed me through my experience to let me hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did it. And you held me accountable. That's why this is supposed to be why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew this was different. I couldn't, and sometimes different, or it'd be like me going, hey, Wesley, write down every quality you want in God. And you go, I can't even wrap my head around that. But you understand and you have a sense about it. This is AA at its finest. And right here, right now, me and you. And we're all in. And you've allowed me to know these things about you from day one, because those are the days you came in and go, you're not going to believe this. I need to sit on the couch today. And you from day one.
And how or why I let myself do that, I don't know.
Because I think me and you had a trust we didn't even understand from the moment we did this. We just, God dang it, just think about that. I trusted you from day one, and you did, and we didn't describe it. We didn't have to define it. Why is it so hard for me to walk out and be that vulnerable and with a healthy side? Because I think me and you were so much alike, our dynamics were so much alike, that why wouldn't I trust you? Why wouldn't I trust Gordon when he's divulged this? Damn, this is almost just like his experience, just different. And
well, and we found such commonality and similarity in our situations, but also in our emotional reactivity to it, and our vulnerabilities and mistakes, and I think it was interesting because it allowed us to see ourselves through someone else, and it wasn't as vulnerable and difficult to swallow, I guess. You know, when you're looking at somebody else's situation, it doesn't feel quite as sacrificial, I guess. You know, and this is back to the reading. This is beautiful. If we were to watch a weaver sewing a tapestry for only a few moments and focused on only a small piece of the work, it would not look beautiful. It would look like a few peculiar threads randomly placed. Which is interesting, because what we're talking about is in the work, doing the work, in the experience of doing the daily work over the ever how many years we did that. That's the thing. And now we're at this place where we have the very unique luxury of being able to see the whole tapestry woven together.
And that reminds me of, I've watched somebody build a pot, spinning
like a potter.
Yeah, like a potter. I never defined what kind of pot, what it was. Man, I was enamored by the process.
With the process. That's beautiful. Say that again.
I would watch the thing spin and it form and not have to go, oh, it's going to look like this.
Because you never know where it's going to go.
And if he doesn't like it, he
Move
goes.
your fingers a little bit and it changes completely.
And if it's not working, he doesn't get all upset. He just goes whoosh, and starts the process over. I could only imagine how therapeutic it would be for me to be in that place and watch somebody build a quilt, tapestry, and go, well, instead of going, well, if he'd have put that thread there, it would have looked better.
How often we use that same limited perspective to look at our life, especially when we're going through a difficult time.
Well, I think that's back for me. That's what was so enlightening when that figure 8 example was given to me at the Meadows. Experience all the feelings, Gordon. Don't get hurt and get hung in the anger and not experience the beauty of the figure 8.
Clarification. Think about a figure 8, the infinity sign, however you want to use that. That's a visual that they use at the Meadows so that you have the ability to see your feelings progression as fluid and not static. It goes back and forth, in and up and down and over. I just wanted, for clarification purposes.
I guess that's where there's 8 basic human feelings or emotions. Why wouldn't they use a figure 8? Because you can put each feeling somewhere in the figure 8. It was the way I took it.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, in that moment, I went, I didn't question it until I got away from seeing it on the chalkboard and went, how do I apply this to, I mean, how am I going to, no, it doesn't, it was fluid. The figure eight is not disconnected. It's connected.
There is no disconnection.
Right.
So what about that point where it crosses over?
Well, you can't look at the crossover.
Why?
Because that's an extension of it. You can appreciate it over there, but I may go, it's not a figure eight. That little line when they jotted over there, she's full of shit. She's full of shit.
Is it one-dimensional or three-dimensional? Does the crossover, do they happen on the same plane, or are they
the crossover of the figure eight.
Figure eight.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's a part of.
Okay.
I think it doesn't look disconnected. It looks fluid to me.
Mm-hmm.
I got to stay connected. I got to stay entrenched. I got to be in my figure eight with my God every day.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not, I get human again. And my figure eight is separated. And God dang it, why did I put all of the bad over here? Now I'm experiencing sadness, anger, me, and all my happy shits over there. Mm-hmm. I did that. It's continual.
I liken that to a metaphor I use in the office all the time, and maybe we've talked about it before, but the idea of playing the old tapes in your head, right? And we're old enough that back when we did things like, mixtapes or whatever, we had to wait for the song.
You remember the 8-track?
Oh yeah. Come on the radio and hit the record button and just try to get the song, right? But the metaphor I use in the office is we play these old tapes in our head, and the tape can be really short. If it's really short and it's full of negative stuff, then it plays over and over and over in your head, right? Like the negative is constantly there. You can't really erase the tape, but you can add to the tape. And so I liken that to putting positive experiences, positive affirmations, positive, to lengthen the tape with more positive stuff. Same thing as the figure eight, right? Like there's going to be bad stuff, but there's also going to be good stuff. And so the more good stuff you put on the tape, the longer the tape gets and the longer it takes for the negative stuff that's on there to come back around and play. It will, because it's on a continuous loop, right? Just like the figure eight. But as long as you continue to add more positive things, which you're in control of, which is a matter of
being clarity, having clarity,
perspective. Why didn't we name this podcast Perspective? We can learn to have perspective when we're going through these confusing, difficult learning times, when we're being pelted by events that make us feel, think, and question. We're in the midst of learning something important. And I think when you're using that metaphor of the figure eight or the tape, you're learning that you have control over what you focus on, what you put on your tape, what you choose to re-experience.
I'm going to get to use an example that we did in the show that is out in cyber world. Just follow me a little bit.
I'm with you.
Who is the perfect character example to stay in that? Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, you said it before I could get it out of my mouth. I was going to sing, but I'm not going to anymore.
So
Winnie the Pooh. That.
I'm
not going to quit my day.
So in these moments of what we're talking, we'll give you
I pulled you out of that, right?
We'll give you a theatrical episode at one time, and we can hear you at your best. But think about it. He has been told all his life he's of little brain. Sometimes he'll say in his little quotes, I'm of no brain. He's always happy and fluid. Think about it. He lives in the 100-acre wood. There's many paths in that wood to go see whoever. Christopher Robin, I'm sure, has his own path from Pooh's quarters. tree or whatever he lives in. And so I strike out to go see Christopher Robin. And my path that day leads me to see Eeyore. Winnie the Pooh never got PO'd that he didn't get to see Christopher Robin. His thing was, maybe I needed to see Eeyore
He shifted
today.
on the fly.
Because he's not all stuck in his head.
Okay, Winnie, remember when we lost this podcast and I was pissed? We had that really big, nice podcast we taped. It was so beautiful. And then they called us and said, oh, bad file. And I was the one who was mad. And you were the one who's like, oh, maybe God has a better podcast in store for us. I was like, Winnie, are you serious?
No, I think what I said.
But I think that one, the one that we taped actually after that was really pretty good, but still.
I think these are better for us. And I'll expand on that.
All right, I'm waiting.
We had to switch gears, get over that. And these next episodes may have been, y'all weren't ready for that. We need to still uncover some stuff within you and Gordon, or me and you, to get you back to where the next one in that similar thing will even be better.
It's fascinating because now that you mentioned that particular experience with that episode sent me off on a, like, I didn't lose control, but it's like I went from being overly analytic and in my therapist head to vulnerable and more connected or disconnected, however you want to look at it, with my own experience of feeling in the situation. Because I typically don't feel, right?
Well, do you think that maybe me and you, up until that moment, felt like we were really in control? Deep down, and we know we're not.
Maybe. Hadn't thought about it
But
that way.
okay, we come in here, we record this thing, and everything's been released. We're in that pattern. That moment went, whoa. Wesley, Gordon, y'all really aren't in control of this.
We can trust that something valuable is being worked out in us, even when things are difficult, even when we cannot get our bearings. Insight and clarity do not come until we have mastered our lesson.
So
how is this so perfect? Like, literally, we don't know where this is going. And I keep pulling back to the reading, and it's like coming right out of this conversation.
Well, it's like maybe me and you thought we were fully exposed up until that episode.
Or not fully exposed.
Yeah.
We had our cloaks on.
Maybe I was butt naked and you...
And then all of a sudden I became the
Well,
flasher.
and the sponsor goes, Gordon, you hadn't even taken off your hat. We're just getting started. Just keep grinding, keep coming back, keep uncovering, and see what happens next. That's why Winnie the Pooh and all of the adventures he goes on are so happy. They're so, he doesn't let Tigger, when Tigger bounces up behind him, he doesn't let him scare him. He already knows what Tigger does.
He is extremely skilled at flying by the seat of his pants
Well,
and adjusting.
And now think about that. Your background and where you are, y'all are thinkers. You have to be. What makes you so good is you got the other gear, that the one we admire a lot. She has it. So do you. You got it. And all of a sudden, I come back and tell my sponsor, you're not going to believe this, Gordon or Jim. I used something we talked about 6 months ago and it worked out. It worked out. And they're going, how did you remember 6 months ago? Or it hadn't worked out till then? No, I didn't have the clarity until 6 months later when that event happened that I trusted the process. You have the process. You have all this to help me walk through my mourning and my loss and all of that. And you were learning and having to deal with it. This is my perspective. And knowing you, I know you. You didn't get to implement this closure thing. And you're experiencing it now. It's not closed yet. It will be when you finish the process. Trust the process, Wesley. Keep coming back. This too shall pass.
Faith is like a muscle. It must be exercised to grow strong. Repeated experiences of having to trust what we can't see and repeated experiences of learning to trust that things will work out are what makes our faith muscles grow strong. It's interesting you were saying that a minute ago, because I have figured out over time that a lot of my own working through things comes through helping other people work through similar things, right? And I think as a result of my being able to walk with you in that situation, it enables me to work out those things in myself without having to go like all the way in with my feelings. Like I can go in a little at a time. And I guess that's my personality, and that's how I end up staying disconnected from things is that I don't let myself go there, except for in those increments when I'm helping you or anybody else work through their stuff. It gives me a vehicle through which I can kind of work through my own. And I think that's normal for every therapist, right? I think we all do that to some degree.
Well, when my sponsor, when I'm this little child that showed up to him, and he goes, Gordon, you're ready to sponsor now. And I go, oh, no, I'm not. He goes, every monumental, every good experience you've had with me is going to be better when you get to walk somebody else through the work. And boy, was he right. And if I didn't take his advice and trust all the schooling I got up until then, which it was, at some point I'm going to have to go, ooh, I'm going to have to get out on my own and apply this to me. And so watching the newcomer, man, you remember a couple 3 episodes, that fires me up. What fires me up is actually something I set out with a sponsor and just trusted him like I have you. I get to apply it and see what happens. And in those moments, it does. With you, I get to watch you go through what I have had to go through in your way. And you're a holder honor. We have that same thing. I want to hold on to everything. Put all those cards in that box and we'll store it. Because those cards have incinerated me that my mom sent me until I got with someone that said, don't you have the memory in here? It's always been there, Gordon. A picture, pictures are different. This little mom thing you gave her, you don't need it. You remember buying it and giving it to her. Trust that. And that's AA at its finest. You're not going to be able to describe this. You're not going to be able to define it. Just trust the process. It'll work. That's what the Meadows kept saying. We're just teaching you a process. This sign that pisses you off every time we hold it up to you, hopefully when you get out, you know you have 8 basic feelings, and maybe that figure 8 impacted you enough to just remember you don't have to stay stuck in any one thing. How many years ago was that? 15? Dude, I can't even remember when they worked out. But I remember when they worked out. There was a reason, I think. And dude, Wesley is all in. He's loving this. I'm so glad you're back.
Thank you.
I really am, man. I was looking at a blank room and I was sort of just going, oh, this is damn uncomfortable a little bit. Where's my safety net. No, where's my?
No, I know.
Where's my guy, man? To this isn't anyway. It was awesome, but I don't know, man. I mean, this is AA. At 15 years, you're going to go, I don't even think about drinking, but I just lost somebody close to me. How do I get through that? Well, I can't tell you how to get through it. I can share those experiences that I had.
And walk with you while
and
you
I will
get through
walk.
it.
I'll hold your hand. I'll do whatever you need me to do to get you through this. That was your role to me. But at some point you went,
Well, and clearly that was your role for me too.
well, and it didn't,
Whether I even acknowledged it or not.
I don't think either of us did. It just was. And in those moments, me and you didn't have to overthink it, overanalyze it, because y'all are analytical, right? I mean, that's why it was just bumfounding to me that when do you take care of yourself, Wesley? Well, I had that experiential, and that was enough. That was enough for the moment.
Enough to disturb me really
and
seriously.
so they tell you, don't forget about yourself. Because if you don't worry about yourself, you may not be able to be there for the person that really needs you. So like if I didn't trust this whole process that since 15 has led me up to, I did. For some reason, I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, Wesley, but whether this reaches one person, 600, me and you are going to be better versions of ourselves just doing it.
And that goes into what I was thinking about saying just a minute ago is that as we're working through becoming better versions of ourselves, as people listen to us do that, it was exactly what I was thinking about a minute ago when you were talking about that, is in my own experience of walking through your situation with you, I was not directly dealing with my own, but I was walking with you, dealing with an almost identical experience. So I didn't have to, this is my vulnerability or lack thereof, of being in the midst of it. You were in the midst of it. I was a participant observer, which is.
But you have a unique ability to be vulnerable with those situations from my point of view. And so you took it a little bit more in, you let a boundary down, mm-hmm. and you felt it with me. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you didn't have to go, hey, Gordon, I trust you enough to do, we just did.
And hopefully with our doing this and deconstructing these things this way, that people that are listening to us can have similar experiences so that they can see how the process kind of works, and it demystifies it, right? Because it absolutely takes doing this with someone else in whatever capacity that is, whether it's a friend, a therapist, it doesn't matter, a sponsor, doesn't matter who it is, that having the clarification of someone else's experience and the key factor being trust, because if you don't trust a person, you're not going to be completely honest with them, consequently not being honest with yourself, right? And I think that's what allowed me to work through a lot of things I wasn't finding ways to work through, was in helping you work through the same thing. It wasn't the same thing as me dealing with it. I was helping you work through it.
Maybe
so I didn't have to like acknowledge. I didn't have to fully experience it. I didn't have to go there. You were already there.
But you
so
were
I could
there.
walk with you, right?
I think you were more in there than you're giving.
That's what I'm saying.
You were all in.
But at the time, I wasn't letting myself consciously know that, I guess.
Oh, you knew it. Or you wouldn't come back the next week and tell me something
else.
Like that you didn't have to tell me. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, Gordon, you're not going to believe this. I had that text exchange with
thus and such person, whoever.
That we just have this banter. And it and then I went, oh, that's sort of like my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And and the next time it was, hey, you're like, it just, I don't know, man. That's how sponsorship is. And I want to say too, and you said it to me, if this isn't good for you, Gordon, I care about you enough to move on and find that person. I've told sponsees, if I'm not your guy, I'll be your guy till you find that guy, because I would do you a disservice if I'm not your guy.
Finding a therapist is like finding a mate. You either click or you don't.
And a sponsor.
You can do work. You can do good work. But once you take it past that into the next realm, into the next level, that's when the work really starts.
That's when the
serious.
clarity is becoming clearer. When you can get this level and then you go, God, maybe there is another level. I hope I can see it. And you're experiencing it and you're seeing it vividly. And you're going, oh my God, they were right. I can see clearly now.
The rain is gone.
Or those days that it's overcast. Oh, it's a weather change, Wesley. You know, it's cloudy outside. I'm just going to stay in my little Eeyore. And you're going, but the sun's out behind it. Little Orphan Annie told us that. The sun will come out.
Tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun.
See what happens when we're...
This is going downhill
No,
quick.
it isn't. This is the good shit. This is what this is supposed to be.
This, people, is what we're talking about.
He was Eeyore walking in here, and dude, you were...
It was a Eeyore morning. Bad.
You have the Wesley smile. You're on your game. You feel better. And dude, you're killing me with, I'm happy now. And I was already happy.
And here's our beautiful wrap up. Today, I will trust that the events in my life are not random. My experiences are not a mistake. The universe, my higher power, and life are not picking on me. I'm going through what I need to go through to learn something valuable, something that will prepare me for the joy and love that I'm seeking.
So one of the last times when we were talking about all this stuff that you came into owning, when getting back, when both of your parents were gone, hell, I'm just going to call hey, Gordon, you got a maintenance guy? I just need to board some stuff up. I'm not ready to deal with it.
Look at the metaphor in that. I'm ready to board some stuff up. I'm not ready to deal with it. And internally, externally, everywhere.
And the process is telling you it's time to take the boards down. And our natural thing, and I get it, it's just a good example. It's uncomfortable. I'm busy today. Nancy, don't even tell me, just go get rid of it. Now, when he drives back to his office, the therapist is going to come up and he's going to understand it's not their process, it's yours. Susan cannot get me through all the stuff I've been through. It's not her job. How many times have I resented the fact that if she would just take control of this, it'd be better? And then the little Jim pops up in my head and goes, it's not her experience, Gordon. And that's about sort of how he talks or did talk. And now I'm sitting here going to Oklahoma, sharing with my best friend in life, William, who's in this thing with me, always has been. I looked at him and said, dude, I know you don't share your story enough, but it's time you go to Oklahoma. And I told him that several months ago. And he's like, dude, and I go, no, you pick the time, but it's a process. He had to do that because I have to experience that with him for me. Because Jim isn't here to take me to these places anymore. All of a sudden, I'm out front, taking these people to places that mean so much to me that my natural go-to was board it up. I may not even go back to Triangle. My people are gone.
Except just then, you almost duplicated Jim's voice. Jim's voice is in your head constantly. That's what I'm saying is that's a wonderful, wonderful example of we keep those people with us. Once we invest in them, trust them, listen to what it is they have to say, and absorb that into us as part of our own dialogue, they're never gone.
And I'll share this with you, and now I mean it, and I felt it with my dad. This has been the most difficult, hardest thing I've ever done is to get comfortable enough and not miss my dad into me being mad at him. And I told Jim, and I meant it when I said it, several years before he passed away, I go, I know the end goal. I know what happened. At some point, God and my dad made a deal because my dad wasn't ever he crossed that line to come back. And it wasn't until years into this that I said, but I can remember his look in his face the last time I saw him. And it's incinerated in there. I just hadn't paid attention to it. And Jim said, what was it? And I said, he couldn't really talk. I just poured him a sip of vodka, and he looked up at me as if to say, I'm doing this for you. I'm a dad, and I'm giving you the ultimate sacrifice. I'm dying for you. So you don't have to go through what I have. This alcohol thing, I don't want you. I love you, son, enough that this is my role as a father. Well, break it down more simply and say, what's an ultimate thing a father would do? I'd lay my life down for my son. And I would. I mean that. I'd step in front for both of them and my wife, but for the son thing, dude, I forgot that until that gun moment and remembered that. And I go, just remember, he sacrificed. He did this because you're a visual person. I'm not educational variety. And that look, I'll never forget. Sometimes I can see it and be happy about it. Sometimes I can go, you're just making that up, Gordon. And Jim said, if you said it and you feel it, that is what it was. You just got to remember it.
How is that for the ultimate expression of clarity?
Sometimes it's obscured by humans, by material things, but it's there. It's always been there. I just got to believe it is. The God within, this power greater than myself has always been right here. It just sometimes I feel human. I want to feel like poo. Because if I get rid of this and trust my heart, everything works out better. That's just my spin, my perspective. But you are clued in and you're listening to me because your therapist wall is down, which it's been with me from day one. And you're absorbing this, and your intellect's enough to know maybe I can apply this in something with me. And you come in and share your son, you don't want, board it up and I'll deal with it later.
I'm trying to figure out what to say. I usually have things to say, but I don't really have anything to say to that because how are you supposed to top that? There's no need for me to top that. And I think...
Hence the gift of two human beings being vulnerable, no titles, no nothing, and we're helping one another.
I always feel like I have to clarify or simplify or rectify or whatever.
We are.
And there's not really anything to say to that. I appreciate more than you know the ability to sit and listen to that and not feel as though I have to come up with something.
I hung on you when you were giving me tools. I believed it. You speak from the heart. You always have. Even when you're in a therapeutic mode. So does Kathleen. So I don't have to worry about y'all's education. I trust y'all. Because y'all.
We bring our humanness to it. And that's what you just did for me.
It's always been there, big guy.
I got out of the way, which is very difficult for me to do.
Oh.
I don't ever generally do that. See, I was way in the way walking in the door. I was in my own way walking in the door. Hopefully I can walk out of the door and not be in my own way, because I've got 5 or 6 people to go see this afternoon and I can't be in the way.
You're going to be a better version for those people.
Once again, I hope you take absolutely exactly what you need from this. And I'm so glad to be back here looking at you, and wow, what a session.
Are we going to go to
what
dinner
an experience. Oh, I know. We need a cigarette.
That's good. That's
there
good.
You go.
Yes.
I didn't ever do cigarettes. I was always about, chocolate covered Oreos.
How about a pipe?
Not chocolate. It's always chocolate.
We can get smoking jackets and slippers.
A flak jacket.
Well, you went through a cigar phase.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be time for our cigar.
No, not yet.
I think we have more uncovering.
Oh, gosh. I think it's like, get out your shovel. It's going to get deep in here. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week, and we'll come up with something else wonderful and brilliant to share with you.
Hang in there, everybody. This too shall pass.
Take care.
Bye.
You can find our podcast Face in the Mirror anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. Our music is provided with permission from Wade Bowen. The title song is Turn on the Lights, written by Wade Bowen and Stephanie Smith. Copyright 2008 Wade Bowen.
Please turn on the lights. Let me see you crying. You're not here alone. I'm in here with you trying. I want to see the truth.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.